22 days, 4 winners remaining, 1 co-host, and 1 podcast. This is Stranded for Victory, and I'm your host, Pooty. Today we're joined by legendary player, 3-time Stranded All-Star, and most recently isolated, Nate.
Hello.
And we are going to be breaking down Stranded for Victory since the merge. We've not done a podcast in a while. I guess let's just go overall how we think the season has gone. Right now, we've just lost Cassandra after kind of a threat aside, after losing all the big threats in the season, unfortunately. But the good news is, in an all-winner season, the players that remain, while they may not play the flashiest game, are at least good players. What are your thoughts so far on the season as a whole?
Yeah, I've been really liking the season in terms of there is a decent depth chart to the people who went far that we were kind of... Like, I think you straight up said in the Final 14 podcast. I think that I said, is there anyone who wouldn't have the case for Stranded GOAT if they won? Those 3 of the players you mentioned are all in the Final 3.
Of course.
Final 4, and they're the presumptive Final 3.
Right. I mean...
But it's not like they've played badly. They're not horrible players or accidentally fucking their way to a second victory. They all at least have something good about them. Like with Eve, she's been targeted for 9 of the 14 votes. Or something like that.
Right.
Stephanie is really nice, and Russell has been correctly voting every single time in this season where that's very hard to do.
Yeah, I think, as with any Stranded season, ironically, the winner is never really a good barometer for how great the season is. So, of course, like the quintessential Stranded winner is probably not who you would expect it to be. And I think that's just been proven here. I mean, I didn't expect there to be a fantastic winner this season just because that's not typically what happens. It's usually the person who's pretty steady and just not threatening enough to make it to the end. So in that regard...
Amber Burkages of the world.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not disappointed in the winner. I think, whoever wins will certainly have deserved it.
Yeah, and I think it's actually relatively open to possibility in the final tribal, which I wouldn't have said last week.
Yeah, true. So let's go ahead and break down the votes. Let's start with the Merge Tribal Council. We had, I think, probably one of the more exciting tribals of the season. There are going to be a few more in this merge. Really a fantastic merge. I can't stress enough how chaotic and fun it's been to watch. We saw everyone playing at a really high level. Probably one of the more entertaining seasons we've had, despite this outcome. This merge tribal council, we have 7 votes for Val and 6 votes for Eve.
2 throwaways.
Yeah, there were 2 stray votes from Munin. It was supposed to be a slam dunk for Eve to go home, with Munin voting out Eve, and then with some last minute...
Melinda intentionally threw her vote, and Catalina mistakenly threw her vote.
Right, and then Cassandra was actually a big part of why this flip happened, because she used her vote doubler and really pushed for Val to go home. She was very anti-Val. So really, I think credit for this merge vote can solely go to Cassandra. Although there are some other big players here that convinced Catalina and Melinda to throw their votes away.
Yeah, especially considering, at least in, I think on the Final 14 podcast, it ended with me saying I'd be surprised if Cass and Penner were not voted out basically immediately.
Right.
Considering that Cass was able to build herself into a position of power, make a really strong move, and still not be a massive threat is a real compliment to her game.
Yeah, we just saw Cassandra get voted off an hour ago, 2 hours ago now. So I think that's a little bit shocking because I was expecting her to somehow pull off a win here, especially the high level that she played. I mean, if you look at her confessionals, they're like fucking serial killer maps of who's with who and who she should blindside, and her confessionals are just super intense. I mean, clearly she had endless strategies of what the boot should be, who could possibly be working with whom. And really, I think of the players here, besides maybe Melinda, I think Cassandra was playing the hardest.
Yeah, I agree with that.
The difference for me is I think Cassandra had her finger on the pulse of the game a lot better. She seemed to know what was going to happen. Melinda kind of got blinded a little bit.
Yeah, this is where we saw Melinda's game tank from really a front runner going into the merge, I think. I mean, really, I thought she would win. I think I said that in the last podcast, to someone who's completely out of it. And I think a lot of that is her descent into madness that we saw. really took a dive off the deep end. But also, as we know, she has a relationship with Eve, and I think that really hurt her chances of winning, because I don't think, Cassandra's biggest benefit was that she really didn't care who was going to get voted off. She didn't have any ties to anyone. So it didn't really matter to her how she got to the end. Whereas I think with Melinda, she had so many ties to so many people. We saw her tank her game with Levita, with Joaquin. Really, she cut off bridges that she had built to save her friends or friendships. And that did not benefit her at all.
Yeah, and she was playing it precariously, I guess would be the word. Where she could have at least been more straight up with people, and she'd probably have some respect and be able to salvage that. But she was just too shifty the entire time.
Yeah, she ends up quitting.
Then she multiple extra vote bluff, which I think was her biggest.
She ends up quitting in a few tribal councils from this, but we start to see her descent into insanity. Where her confessionals were like, at one point she had like mannequin heads that she put. By far one of the creepier things I've seen on any Stranded season. And I've seen some shit. So really, we saw her losing her mind. And she said that, like, I'm starting to lose it. Like, my relationships are suffering. My work is suffering. Like, I have to get out of this game. So it was not a surprise that she left, let's put it that way.
Yeah, she burned with a really hot intensity.
I guess let's move on to the next boot, which was Jeff Varner. I wasn't shocked Jeff went here. I was assuming he would do a little bit better than this, but it wasn't like a huge vote. The big thing was that this is when Munin got back into power. Fenrir was targeting Russell, and Munin stuck together to vote off Jeff. Kind of a weird move for me. I don't know. I think for people like Penner, it was weird that he
wasn't targeted there.
Yeah, I don't understand why Jeff over some of the other players. I mean, I know some people were pushing threats, and I get that, but it ended up not happening. So,
I think it's generally because I think in terms of like positioning you want for all returning season, you want to be a Varner. You want to be someone with enough connections, but is under the radar, but not too much connections.
Yeah, I think the biggest head scratcher is that they got rid of Val on that first one instead of Eve. And then here they get rid of Jeff instead of Russell or, somebody a little bit more connected. I think Jeff is someone who was not playing this aggressively enough. Constantly we saw him talk about how frustrated he was that he was being told what to do. I think, nobody was like saying he had to do what people were telling him to do. Like he totally could have flipped on Fenrir. He could have flipped on Cochran, on Penner. So I'm not sure why he didn't take it into his own hands a little bit sooner. And I think that's why he ended up going ultimately.
Yeah, there's a level where you need to, even though not foster new connections necessarily, but begin to like start building connections that wouldn't be expected you to be able to start actually getting power. And that's not what Varner did.
Right. And I think, he said he's someone who is used to being in control of a group. And I don't think he necessarily knew how to play a season where he didn't have those connections or was totally left out of votes, and really in that situation, you almost have to play a little bit like Joaquin did. You got to make things happen if they're not happening organically. Let's go ahead and move on to the next tribal council where Christina ends up going home. This one was a little bit all over the place. Like it was not, I think Fenrir and Munin broke down completely and people were starting to play with not only new friendships that they made, but old friendships too across tribal lines. At this tribal...
Yeah, this is a vote which I still don't understand.
I don't get it at all. I think there were like 3 different targets with Levita being targeted, Russell being targeted, and Christina. The main ones being Russell and Christina. But I think, if I remember correctly, this was when Melinda went rogue and convinced Eve and Levita to vote for Russell, and she used her vote doubler. When they would have had the votes to vote out Levita had they stuck all together, or even if they had told Joaquin and Cataly to vote for Russell instead of Levita.
Yeah, which would they have done at the time?
I don't know. I don't know if... I remember Cataly and Joaquin being a little bit upset as to why they were left out of that vote.
Yeah.
I think an idle contingency, I'm not sure. I know Melinda went rogue at the last minute and switched it to Russell, and they were like, what the fuck,
Yeah, and that's why the orange people, the Fenrir tribe was able to Well, not even defenders, because Russell and Stephanie voted with them.
Yeah, everything kind of broke down during this one. I do remember there was like this huge scramble leading up to it and complete insanity where Christina was the boot, I think, just by circumstance. I honestly think Cassandra was a driving force on a lot of these votes for the merge, especially looking back on like how the vote broke down. I think a lot of it comes down to Penner and Cassandra, because at this time, this is when Joaquin starts to push for that threat alliance, and Penner is not about it.
I remember the Christina boot being more of everyone was just upset with her. Because if I recall, she was telling everyone she was going to flip and no one really knew, or they felt like they knew where she was going to vote going into the last 2 tribals prior to her boot, I think. And then she didn't flip and like ticked everybody off.
That's right. There's so much has happened. It really has been too long.
Yeah, it's. I had to go backwards for a minute because I remembered one of them ticked everyone off and it was her.
Well, and then I think that's similar to how Melinda's name comes up outside of her like outright quitting.
Yeah, even if she hadn't have quit, I think she still would have gone home that tribal.
Yeah, because I know Joaquin was furious with her about the Christina vote, mainly because he and Cataly rogue voted off of what Melinda said, I think. And at this time, I know this is around when Joaquin starts to get fed up with Penner, not going along with the threat alliance. So basically, Joaquin tries to get all of the threats together. I think he approaches Cataly. He approaches
Penner.
Levita towards the end, I think.
Yeah, I think he also talked to Cassandra, if I'm not mistaken.
Tammy would probably be on that list.
Most people besides like Eve and Stephanie and Kim. And I think he even tried to rope Kim in after the fact, I think, at some point. I just think it didn't gain any traction. And it's really hard. I think in this season, particularly, it's not like an all-star where there would be bigger threats than not. I think, having all winners, they probably, the 3 that we're talking about are the only ones who are not obvious threats to win.
Yeah, throw in like some people as well, but yeah, of the merge. If you looked at the final, if you told me 11th place through 5th place for the final 6, that would be the most lit final 6 in Stranded history.
Yeah. Moving on, we had Melinda's vote off. Basically, during Tribal Council, she just says, like, everyone, I want you to vote me off, which I think she said was a little bit of gameplay. Like, she was thinking, look, I'm ready to go, but this is like a Hail Mary, if I stay, I stay kind of deal.
Yeah, she mentioned that she was it like bluffing an idol, possibly, something like that, or playing off of an idol fear?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. A lot of people are like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm actually surprised they did go with that. I was fully expecting them not to vote for her, despite quitting.
I was wondering if that was maybe Levita. Maybe if she kept the Levita relationship a bit stronger, she could have gotten the idol play. But I also don't think that's the player Levita is.
No, I think so, because at that point, Levita was even a little wary of Melinda, and that had been happening for like the last 2 or 3 tribals, like up to like when they merged. So I don't know if she would have spent her idol on somebody that she wasn't sure was an ally.
I thought some super interesting things happened in this merge. What I loved the most about this was that, yes, there were alliances that we predicted would happen that did, but I also think that there were a lot of alliances that I did not see coming that were a little random. Like, I think the biggest one for me was Cataly and Joaquin. Probably my favorite alliance this season, outside of Melinda and Levita.
Yeah, they don't seem an obvious duo, and they play very differently.
No, and they have absolutely no connection, despite them both having a lot of different connections in the game. All of their connections are on separate sides of the aisle. I would have never put those 2 together as being close allies or friends. Yet, it makes sense when you look at it on paper now, that's the kind of stuff I really look forward to, is when you get these legends together that never crossed paths before, that form like a genuine friendship and bond over having similar personalities. I think that's the coolest part of seasons like this.
Yeah, if their connection was a few episodes earlier, they probably could have dominated the season.
Or even, maybe if Joaquin had made New Fenrir, or, if they had ended up together pre-swap, I think that really would have been strong going into a merge.
Yeah, definitely. It's just another situation where maybe they don't vote Tammy out they don't idol out Tammy, or maybe Joaquin doesn't get votes in the first place.
I think a lot of this, too, the reason why this threat alliance didn't work, because I know Joaquin modeled it based off of how I won an All-Star season as a winner. I went into an All-Stars having won a season, and I put together a threat alliance. The difference is, though, when you do that, you have to be really dominant, like super dominant. Like, you'd have to be Cataly to do it. And Cataly would have to put her foot down and have people feeding her information to say, this person's thinking about voting against our alliance. Let's get them out. Like, you really have to kind of bully people into it. It's really fear tactics more than it is everyone agreeing, because it goes against the basis of the game, right? Like, your instinct is to get rid of the threats. So to get all the threats together is very hard to do. You really have to go overboard with it, and that's where I think he fucked up. He didn't decide who the threats were. He didn't make that public knowledge, and then he didn't target the non-threats openly, which I think if he had just said at tribal council, look, let's not let Stephanie, Kim, Russell run this game like we know that they will. If he had just targeted them and had everyone put eyes on them, I think it would have gone a little bit better for him. Also, I think a lot of these people were delusional in thinking that they weren't threats. Like, I think Levita and Penner were convinced that nobody saw them as threatening, yet they were getting all the good things of the challenges.
Levita and Penner were named as Levita and Penner were named as the two biggest threats, episode 1. Yeah,
come on. Penner, everyone knows Penner's, really, when we're looking at best players overall, Penner's in the conversation. For him to think that he had no threat going into this is absurd. I'm not sure why he thought he was under the radar and not a threat to win. I think Tammy was under that impression too, and so was Levita, and that really cost them coming together, even though everyone else knew that they were threats. It's like they didn't think.
Yeah, Penner and Tammy are the two people who are closest to winning twice.
Yeah, I mean, and have the best record. It's crazy to me that they would think that, oh no one's going to be gunning for me. I think that also played a part in it. Usually they should have had the awareness to be like, I'm going to get targeted here. That's part of why I think they went early. Also, not wanting to play ball with Joaquin on that. I think it was a little bit of arrogance. I think they thought, that's all well and good, but I'm going to be the last threat to the end, so I don't need to worry about that. You know what I mean? That's what I think that their thought process was.
Yeah, I think it's really a drop of the ball for Penner, Tammy, and Levita for not really sticking by it quicker.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that they know that now. I think everyone in the jury knows that now. The obvious move would have been for them to get rid of the dead weight. They should know that. They played
the double tribal on.
Yeah, I mean, they should know that. They've played this before. They know what it takes to win and what usually happens to get there. And I think it was a little egotistical of them to think that they were going to be the last one and that they didn't have to worry about it,
And the only person who wasn't included in the Red Alliance who probably was a threat was Cass.
Right, that's true. And really,
she was the only one who did a good job mitigating that.
And really, it made more sense for her to get rid of the threats than it would sticking to the end with Joaquin.
Yeah, it's really the boots from Penner to Cadley who are really, I don't want to say responsible because they obviously know in hindsight, but who really, I think, kind of regret not doing that.
I hope that they regret it because it's so obvious from our point of view. They probably don't, though. I'd imagine Penner's going to have some reason why it wouldn't have made sense for him or some bullshit, but basically, he had the opportunity to work with them, and he didn't, and then he went home directly after. So you tell me. So we have the double tribal where we see Penner go home and then Tammy go home. Joaquin gets votes at both of these, by the way. I think missed opportunity for those people to not knock out Joaquin when they had the chance. I know. So the way this double tribal went was Russell and Stephanie won individual immunity, and they could choose which council they wanted to play it at. And they both chose the first one. And during that first tribal council, everyone targets Penner as the biggest threat. And then at the second tribal council, Joaquin plays his immunity idol. So all the votes against him are nullified, and Tammy ends up going home. What are your thoughts on Joaquin getting rid of Tammy at this tribal council?
I think a lot of it's hindsight, which is where we say, oh, that was a horrible decision.
Yeah.
I think at the time, Joaquin was perceiving it as Tammy is the one who's least likely to work with me.
Yeah, I think it was a revenge move because she wouldn't play ball with them. Whereas I think, it's a little bit of a head scratcher because they all work together in All Stranded. And his closest ally, Cadley, is super close friends with Tammy. So it doesn't really make sense to me why he went for Tammy. And also, Tammy is one of the threats. So, he's going a little bit against his own strategy here.
That's exactly what I was about to say. Even though Tammy wasn't directly with him, I felt like there were better targets.
Yeah, I mean,
probably Kim, a Kim would be a good move, a Stephanie would be a good move.
I think a couple of things happened as to why he messed this up. I think he put a little bit too much stock in Russell's loyalty to him. I think he thought Russell was going to work with him till the end, whereas Russell's plan was to take out Walk before the end. So, I think that's where he miscalculated because he left in Russell's two biggest allies and goats, Stephanie and Eve. And by doing that, he allowed Russell to steamroll the season, really. I mean, after that, it's a foregone conclusion.
I think maybe a fear would be that because Tammy is so close to Cataly, of a Cataly, Tammy, Stephanie group getting power towards the end. But you could do the same thing by idling out Stephanie.
Right. No, you're right. I mean, if you say get rid of Stephanie there, that takes out Russell's number. It takes out Cataly's number one, so that now Joaquin is her number one, and it takes out one of the goats for the finals. So I think that, from an outsider's perspective, is the obvious move there. And then like another bad move is at the very next tribal council, when Joaquin wins immunity, they get rid of Levita. And to be fair, it was a tie, but by getting rid of Levita, that only leaves Joaquin and Russell as the two challenge beasts. Like Levita's the only one in the season who has beaten Russell up until this point, other than Joaquin. So in like a shootout challenge of speed. So, I think once Levita goes home and all that's left...
Technically Stephanie as well, but that doesn't help their argument.
No, I mean...
Now that I'm looking at it.
I mean, honestly, it's a little shocking that Russell has run the table because there are a lot of really strong challengers. Like Cassandra won like 6 challenges in Revenge against some of the best all-stars. So, it's not like these are challenge slouches. It's just like, I think Russell had beaten them out so shockingly in so many challenges at this point. I think to let him just slide through was a huge mistake. And to take out like his competition in challenges.
Can we talk about how crazy that second tribal was though on that day? Like all the whispers. One of the craziest things for me watching this season, and this is obviously my very first one that I've ever learned, was how rare it was for these castaways to have a plan solidified going into tribal. And for a double elim, I mean, it does make a little bit more sense to not have it solidified, but all the whispers going on, it was like that Tammy vote just happened within like a couple of minutes,
Yeah, we had, and thank you for saying that, because this is your first season lurking, and you're coming off of, such a unique experience. Like, what they're going through, and it's weird being able to see everything and have that knowledge of like, oh, this is what they should obviously do. But like,
right.
But like, they don't know that. I mean, they don't know the variables. So, and especially I think this season, what we saw, the biggest takeaway from this is like all of the winners were playing extremely close to the chest because so many of them had connections, like the magic word connections that Courtney loves. They all were so connected that they would spread information so rapidly that what ended up happening is everyone would not want to throw out a name or would wait a long time before trying to blindside someone. So then we'd get these mass scrambles right before tribal where people were not really naming people, or it was weird. Like you said, there weren't a whole lot of concrete plans going into tribal council. I think because there were so many connections that information was just leaking left and right. So like what happens if everyone's plans are outed, I think that's what we saw a lot happen. And really, I think too, it speaks to the level of players that we have here. I think that there's endless possibilities. When everyone is willing to do anything, I think it's really a crapshoot every tribal of what could possibly happen.
Yeah, when 14 people are trying to play the middle.
Yeah, and are like really good, like really smart. They see what everything is, and they're able to navigate around that. Like, what does that look like? It's like when you play chess with a really good player, I think that's what we saw here. So that tribal council was insane. We also saw the first time, we talked about this preseason about introducing whispering into the game. We had looked at some different formats. We saw other forums were able to do that. I was not prepared to start it this season, but people were asking like, hey, can I whisper at tribal council? And I was like, well, let's give it a go. See what happens, if it's exciting or not. And it ended up being super exciting and making it, my thought was that, maybe it would kill off paranoia because people could just tell everyone what the vote should be instead of just having to kind of guess. But I think what ends up happening is that when people start whispering, your plan starts to change, or you start second guessing if they're talking about the same plan or if they're trying to start a new one. So I think that's going to be the biggest takeaway from this season is like whispering was a game changer for sure.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if we're going ahead of ourselves for this, but I think the vote where that really showed to matter was the Levita Tribal Council.
Yes.
Where I think the move that's either going to make or break Russell's game is, does the jury like that he was able to force the tie basically all through whispers?
So talk us through what happened at that tribal for those unaware.
Basically in the Levita tribal, the plan was to vote. I forget exactly what it was, but there was the plan that was made in the last few minutes to vote out Cataly. And it was Russell who got them to split their votes between Cataly and Eve entirely through whispers. It was initially Cataly going out, I believe. No, sorry, it was initially Eve, and then Russell got Kim P to change her vote to Cataly, which caused the tie.
Yeah, didn't she change her vote like 3 times during that tribal council?
Yeah.
Yes.
She changed it within the last minute as well, which was all due to a Russell PM. So if he wins this season, that's the move that directly made him win.
I will say this, as much as Russell is not my ideal winner, because he's a good player, he's a great strategist, and he's good at the challenges. I don't know if he's the best socially, and he's not something...
He's very messy and very slimy.
Yeah, he's he's way too arrogant for someone who's not that great. That being said, he has played the season phenomenally, and he has put in the effort. I think that's key, that people have not put in. So, if he does win, I think it's well earned. Nobody can take that away from him because he put in a hell of a lot of effort into practicing all the challenges, putting together voting charts and bullying his way through a lot of these votes. I think the reason it would be disappointing is because he hasn't been involved enough socially for me. He didn't make all those strong connections to get his way to the end. I think really he will have gotten to the end through challenges and possibly his strategy.
Which, to be fair, I don't think he needed any of his wins.
No, I think he was labeled a GOAT. And I appreciate him saying, look, I'm going to get taken to the end as a GOAT. So if I win my way to the end, nobody can say that, and that's admirable at least.
Yeah, but it's a different social game when you're planning on GOAT hurting when you're one of the GOATs. I think this is, to be fair, not to reference myself, but during ISO 4 when I made the final 2 with Glenn. And that was mostly because just in case it becomes a goat herding competition, I want to have this in the back of my pocket. And that wasn't necessarily a social win.
Right. Reem, what would you say watching? Why would you be disappointed in a Russell win?
I feel like he alienated a lot of people with his social game. I mean, they're talking crap about him on Ponderosa as we speak. I think he definitely rubbed people the wrong way. I think him being labeled a GOAT is probably why he was never targeted this entire time, even with his wins. I agree with Nate that if he hadn't won, he still wouldn't have been targeted because of that label. I feel like games like this are threefold. You've got your strategy, you've got the social, and then you also have challenges. And when someone fails at one of them, it's kind of hard to be well-rounded.
Right.
That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, and if he was better socially, he would have this game on lock. Well, he doesn't currently.
Right.
Yeah, he definitely rubbed a lot of the jurors the wrong way.
There's a bunch of jurors that are willing to vote Eve right now.
Yes.
Well, just
I think Kim wins if she's there, which I don't think she will be.
Just his attitude at tribal council is, I think, it's infuriating to listen. I laugh whenever he says something really arrogant or preachy to other winners who have won plenty of games, let alone Stranded, which he has not won, by the way. And I think that is part of it. I think that people will see that and be like, okay, dude, I'm not going to be lectured to by you about how to play this game. You know what I mean? I think it's his attitude towards, I know he probably doesn't do that on purpose. I think he's probably unaware that it's coming across that way, but it does come across that way. And I think that that's a problem. And I think that's a big reason why people are rooting against him, including viewers and myself. Because, anybody else, I think I would be super excited that they're dominating and winning out. But for some reason, the way he's played, it's not exciting or it's not something you're rooting for to happen.
Yeah, even when he said in Tribal, I think when Cataly was voted out, I think it was, no, sorry, not Cataly, I think Levita, I think he posted, oh, sorry, I lied to you all, but Cataly, Walk, or Cass are going to win the game if they make it to the end. We need to vote off one after the other.
Yikes.
Just turned off super condescending to those three.
So let's skip ahead then. So after this tie vote where it goes to the revote and ends up Levita leaving 4-2 against Eve, then we get Joaquin finally loses a challenge and loses out on the hidden immunity idol to Cassandra. He ends up going home 4-3 with Cassandra getting the 3 votes. Actually, a very close vote. He really very narrowly pulled that off.
Yeah, but I think it was more of an idol split.
Totally. It was totally an idol split. That being said, it was so much closer than it should have been.
It should have been a 4-2-1.
Yes, exactly.
I think
5-2. Yeah.
Yeah, or whatever the minimum would be.
So then after that, of course, the next tribal council, Cataly goes home 3-2-1. I think that's another idol split. Well, that one was close too. I think Kim flip-flop on her vote for Cataly.
Yes, she switched her vote, I think 2 or 3 times on that one.
Kim.
Can't
Kim
remember.
is all over the board. We're going to talk about Kim's
Oh.
chances, but
That was the worst boot.
yeah, I can't say enough good things about Cataly. Like, I'm sure people are groaning about how much we've gushed, but I think, when she came back for revenge, that season was so dark-sided that it was such a disappointing note for her to leave on because, like, she was in her first season in Stranded. She was the merge boot, and then she came back and won. And then, she went on to host some seasons, and there was a little bit of bad blood between us over that. We had a little falling out, and then, we patched things up, and then she came back for revenge, and then in that season, she went, like, super early. She was, like, the fourth boot. So it was always, like, a sour note, and I always wanted to end on a good note with her. So I kept asking her back, and of course, it never worked out. She's always really busy with her own games. And then finally, she agrees to do this season, out of the blue. I really was not expecting her to play. And I think, she's such an iconic figure in gaming, but also as one of the winners of Stranded. I think it was really cool to see her come back. I was not expecting a whole lot. I thought she would kind of half-ass it. And I think she did up until a point. And then once we finally...
Yeah, I think she was one of the more inactive ones in the beginning because they were talking about it in chats.
Yeah, and she was kind of resting on her very many connections that she had going into this, which was fine. But I think when we saw her really have to play and the claws came out, that's when it was like, yes, this is why people love her so much and why she's so fun to watch play. There were some really great quotes at the tribal councils where she was targeted. I'm going to pull some up, but Reem, talk to us a little bit about Cataly since you're like her biggest fan.
Cataly. I find that she and I have a lot of parallels in our game style, that head bitch in charge kind of mentality. And what I liked seeing from her, from somebody who was not successful in their season, was she was getting information from pretty much everyone. And it was all accurate information. I think there's only a couple of times where it wasn't. She kind of read through that a little bit. But she was also protected by like all these people. Anytime her name was sort of brought up, it was like, oh no, let's do somebody else. It was insane watching because she was like this puppet master. Even though it was very obvious that she was doing it, the way she was telling them, it wasn't like she was dictating votes, but she kind of was. But they all just rallied around her, and it was crazy watching it. It was really impressive.
Yeah, just going back, she just had like great one-liners, and to be fair, so did Cassandra. But at one point, she was like, "Which one of you idiots voted for me?" And then she was like, "Just say who you're gonna vote for, you pussies." Like, what the fuck? When they're all whispering.
The Levita tribal.
Yeah, that was amazing. And then her the tribal council where she ends up going home was awesome too, because she's just fighting with Russell the whole time. And I think that's also a big part of why we dislike Russell. I think because he was a little bit of the anti-Cataly club.
He literally slayed our face.
Yeah.
One of my favorites, and it was in a chat, but it was with her and Kim, and I posted it in the server. But everyone was saying, like, well, this person might be voting for you. So she had, like, no qualms about approaching them and being like, people are telling me you're voting for me. Why? Like, what are you doing? I was like, yes, queen, I love you. It's so good. She did that with a couple of people throughout the season.
She says, I just think it's funny that Kim thinks she has a chance against anyone. I'm not bitter, just being real. I think the great thing about this season is that with all of the big threats, quote unquote, being on jury, I think we're in for an amazing final tribal council.
Yeah, I want to hear Cass's and Cataly's final tribal speech.
Oh man,
yes.
I think even Joaquin's is going to be fun. Like,
Yeah, I was about to say Joaquin too.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Levita's too nice. Tammy won't be.
I think, the cool thing about this season, although a lot of these people play with each other on Orgy a lot, I think that this one was a little different because it's outside of their arena and with a lot of different players, and it was for money. So, I think in some aspects, I think those people are used to aligning and then, playing with one another. But I think here, some of them took the shots that they normally don't take at big players. And I think that made it a lot more fun to watch. I think when this season's all said and done, regardless of who wins, I think it will go down as one of our best seasons. I think it's been insane to watch, and I think the cast is incredible.
Yeah, even the boots that were a bit more predictable at least had some fun to it.
Yeah, I mean, there were not very many predictable boots, to be fair. Only the last 3 or so.
I think the last week has been pretty set in stone.
Yeah, it's just been biggest threat one after another. After the Levita vote, it got pretty obvious how it was going to go. that being said, that's only the top 7. I guess we'll talk about the finals now. Now that Cassandra's gone, the final 4 is Kim, Eve, Stephanie, and Russell. Who do we see as our winner?
I think Stephanie.
I think that's a good
I
bet.
think Stephanie's going to pull it out.
I think that's a good bet too. I think
Kim is going to end up getting voted out. I don't know who's going to win this challenge.
It's going to be Steph or Russell, I think.
Yeah, I think Russell can get some votes, but I think Steph's going to pull it.
I would be really interested to see a final tribal council with Kim, Eve, and Stephanie. And also, I will say the cool thing about those 3 is that none of them have played Stranded more than their first season. So they would be like a true 2-time winner, 2 for 2 in Stranded.
Versus Russell, who got 2 for 7.
Yeah, well, 1 for 7, really. I mean, 1 for 6, and then he won isolated.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think even Russell going to the final 3 with Eve and Stephanie, I don't know if he can win. I think he definitely can win, but I think it would be very difficult. I think it'll be close. I don't think it's going to be easy.
I think it's up to how he approaches Final Tribal. I think a lot of the early votes are somewhat removed from Russell's poor soft social game, so they could be swayed.
Right. I don't think anyone in the last week is going to vote for him.
Maybe a Penner?
Maybe. Yeah.
Oh no, Joaquin said that he would vote Russell in one of his things on Ponderosa. I don't know. I think Stephanie will pull it though, and I think Eve will end up getting some stray votes. But I think she's got it locked. She's going to be in final 3.
Yeah, I think
no doubt.
If that's the final 3, Eve, Steph, Russell, everyone gets votes.
I was talking about this with Danny. Yeah. I really like Eve as a person and as a player, and I'm almost thinking like it's not even her fault necessarily that she's been. I mean, it is her fault. Let's be real, but it's not entirely bad of a game that she's played, because I think a lot of it's circumstantial. Like, I think
she's had very little room to work with.
Yeah, like she was targeted for the very first merge vote. Like she very narrowly went home, and then ever since then she's been locked out of every alliance except for with Russell and Melinda, obviously. So, and I really like her, and she's been trying to get in, and she's been targeted like so many times. It's crazy to me that like, even though she's a huge GOAT, she almost went home for like 5 tribal councils. It's kind of crazy. So in that respect, it would not be the worst win, and I would almost enjoy it just for it being completely unexpected. Out of this 4, my favorite winner would be Kim, just because I think she had an amazing arc throughout the whole season. I think that time on Fenrir was amazing to watch. I think that's really where she gained us as fans. She kind of lost it throughout, especially in the merge. I think she really dipped down. That being said, of these 4, I really think she would be the best winner.
Yeah, remember when Kim was like promising to get rid of Penner, and she was one of the few who didn't vote him out?
Yeah, I think Kim has been a really good player throughout this whole thing. I think, I think she's lost it a little bit in the merge. Like I said, I think she's been a little bit out of the loop.
She did probably the correct moves, but not the fun moves.
Yeah, and
right.
It's almost like she didn't want to make the moves that she was making, too. Like, every council, she's like, I really didn't want to do this. I told you this would happen. That kind of thing. Which is, it's a little bit, that's frustrating, because it's like, well, why is that happening then? And also, that's not a great, like, a resume builder that every vote you didn't want to happen. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, being forced to every decision.
Yeah, like, it didn't go your way every time. That means you're playing terribly, And I don't think she's playing terribly. I just think, like, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't say, like, I didn't want this person to go home, but I made that move.
Yeah. In the beginning, Kim was like in my top 5 favorite people, and when the merge hit, I found that her allies sort of, I'm not going to say they like steamrolled her, but they definitely were the ones making the decisions where she just voted with them. So she kind of got lost in the background for me. But I would be happy with a Kim win at this point. I think it'll be hard, though.
The biggest story with Kim is that she burned Cataly. And I think Cataly is super pissed off about it.
Oh, yeah, she's pissed.
Does that cost her the win in the final 3?
It would not.
So if she's sitting up against Russell in the final 3, does she have a shot at winning?
I think Kim wins if she's in the final. I think there's enough early jurors who have only seen, Russell's commanding this GOAT alliance out of pure principle. They'd all vote Kim.
Yeah. I think.
Yeah, and I think those who would have voted Cass, I think that she would get those votes as well. So I think that she would win in a final 3. I just don't know if she's going to make it to final 3.
Yeah, that's very true.
She's been latched to Russell this entire time. I don't see her voting away from him.
Right.
And he seems to be leaning towards Kim.
I think that's almost certainly the correct move.
So Stephanie is someone who's very likable. We all like Stephanie. I've been rooting against her because she's so boring. That being said, I don't think she's played badly. I think she's been too passive. I think she would not be like the ideal winner, but I don't think she'll be a bad winner. I think Stephanie...
Yeah, but if Russell's trying to argue his win, his argument is based on him being the active one out of those three.
Just a little background. I think Stephanie's season is actually the last time we've done this horrendous challenge where basically you post as many times as you can within 24 hours.
Yeah, that's what she said in her confessional.
And she won this challenge the last time she played by like a lot. So it's not going to shock me if Stephanie wins this. Does that gain her favor in the jury? Having like, let's say she demolishes everyone in this challenge and shows like she stayed up for 10 hours.
Stephanie's already 10 pages ahead.
Yeah, let's say she stays up for 10 hours and fucking demolishes everyone. Does that... I've seen this challenge back when we used to do it completely sway a jury's decision because it's purely willpower. And I think it matters a lot when someone's willing to sit there and do something so fucking boring and crazy for 24 hours to win a game. Does that sway the jury's decision on Stephanie?
Oh, I think 100%. Because if you like Stephanie, you can point that to an argument, and people who are slightly positive on Stephanie and very negative towards Russell, considering that Russell's core argument has to be, I fought like hell the entire season. You can just point to, no, Stephanie spent like 12 hours on this.
Does Stephanie, let's say Stephanie wins immunity, does she take out Russell or does she take out Kim?
Kim.
That's a tough decision. I think it's twofold, right? I think if she gets rid of Russell, she can claim that she defeated Russell in challenges and it was her that took out her friend in order to win, right? I think that's a good move.
Yeah.
It could also backfire in that, you know, like
Kim has much more of an argument than Russell. Kim has a similar argument to Russell with it. She did more.
She's the outsider, you know.
That's Stephanie, but doesn't have the people who hate her.
Right. So that's going to be tough. If she wins this is going to be a tough decision. What happens if Stephanie causes a tie vote where, let's say, Eve and Kim vote for Russell and Stephanie and Russell vote for Kim? I think that's the worst case scenario for Stephanie. I think if she causes a tie on behalf of Russell, I think that's going to come across terribly. See, I think she can't win here because if she gets rid of Kim, that's going to sound like she had the shot at Russell and she didn't take it because he convinced her not to, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Russell will have his argument of, I have my GOAT alliance.
I know. She's not in a great position, but she did that to herself. You know, I don't know if she can win this situation because, like, you can spin it either way.
Right. If I were Stephanie, I probably would get rid of Russell just from the narrative that's been spun from the tribal councils. Because right now, it's pretty much understood, even by the people in the game, Steph, Russ, Eve. And the information's gotten around that this is the three that's going to end up there. Like, even Kim is aware that she has this hard road ahead of her. So if I were Steph, in my head, I would be thinking, okay, why do they want to sit with me? If I do have a chance, the votes are probably going to be split between myself and Russell. If I get rid of Russell, I'll get those votes. Whereas the ones who are going to vote for Kim more than likely might stray onto Russell or Eve rather than myself. So I would take my chances with bringing Kim to the finals.
Yeah, I think it's a bad move for her to take Russell with her because it sounds like, you know, he has a lot more to gain from that. Like, he would say, I didn't need immunity. He could say he got Steph to keep him around despite winning a lot.
Right.
You know, I think by her keeping him, he takes possession of that move. Whereas I think if she kills off Russell, that's 100% her move, you know.
Not to mention at the last tribal where Cass went home like 2.5 hours ago. It feels like it's been days. I think you had asked him, if you had not won, would you be safe? And he was like, oh yeah, I'll be safe.
Yeah.
I mean, he will keep this narrative going if she brings him to finals.
I think it's a bad look for her. That's my thing. Like, and maybe it won't be. Maybe people are so soured on Russell that he can't win, but I don't know. I think it's a bad look to keep him in. I don't think Kim...
Yeah, that's true.
I don't think Kim is that great of a threat or that obvious of a threat to not take her to the end. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's like such a slam dunk that... It's not like it's Cass, right? Where you have to get rid of Cass. This is Kim we're talking about, who's not really beloved by most people, and she hasn't done a whole lot, you know?
Now that I'm looking at the Ponderosa, when Cass tried a little bit of arguing for Kim, Melinda just said, well, that's good for you, but none of us give a fuck about her.
This jury does not like Kim. I think a lot of that's led by Cataly, but Kim's done that herself. You know, she flipped on a lot of these people too, and had the opportunity to save them, and she was like, nope, it's out of my control, you know? It's going to be tough.
So I guess it comes down to like...
Exactly what happened.
It's true, though. Like,
They got like a pen
Yeah.
and paper.
Like she totally had the opportunity to flip. There was so many votes that were like one vote differences between someone going home, and she didn't do it. You know, and in fact, she like waffled on votes during tribal council that caused a lot of people to go home. Cataly, Levita, you know, that I don't understand how she can really think that like it wasn't her fault. I guess because she thinks, well, I told them ahead of time that they were going to go home. You know, like of course that would happen. Their name was up for tribal. Like of course they could go home. Why is that like revolutionary that you told them that?
Mm-hmm.
Cass did that shit too. Like I told them this would happen if they voted that way. Well, yeah, that's easy to fucking say when it's their name on the chopping block. You know, I just don't know. I don't think Kim's a slam dunk to win if she gets to the final three. And I think actually Stephanie's best chance is to not take Russell. I think Stephanie could win either way, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think Stephanie has the best shot of everyone here.
Honestly, Stephanie's best play is to probably let Russell win this immunity and vote out Kim.
Yeah, that's 100% true.
You know, I think that way it keeps her hands clean. And by that, I mean, like, she doesn't have to claim a move that people can pick apart. You know, she can just stay where she is in terms of win equity, you know?
Yeah, where she doesn't have to burn someone all the way out.
Yeah, and not even that, like, it's a huge move that people are going to argue for or against. And if she doesn't even have that option to argue, she can just focus on her entirety of the game for her, you know?
That she has, yeah.
Basically, if Stephanie wins immunity, this is going to be her move, this final tribal council, before the final tribal council, this penultimate tribal council.
Yeah, I can see if she wins, I mean, guaranteed, one of the jurors are going to ask her, why did you pick this person over this person? Guaranteed. And it's going to be ripped apart regardless. I don't know if I would throw a challenge, though, to Russell.
No, I mean, you definitely...
Yeah, you can't throw the final four challenge.
And this is a pure willpower challenge. Like, it does not look good if you throw this challenge.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not even close to winning this challenge, you look bad, you know?
Yeah.
Like if Eve has, 3 pages after this is said and done, she's lost. I mean, she's probably already lost. But if she doesn't even try this challenge, people are going to be like, oh, she didn't give a fuck, you know?
Can see each of these challenge threads as well as the cast.
Yeah, the jury can see all this.
Can the other castmates see it that are still in the game? Okay.
So that's part of the psychology of this challenge. Like, you kind of want to build up enough of a lead to where people are like, oh, I don't even want to try anymore, you know? Or to get out enough ahead of them. It's a little bit of a race type situation going on.
Yeah. And I think if Eve genuinely if she gets last place in this challenge, I think her votes aren't going for her.
No.
Because the people she could pick up are people like Jeff, people like Melinda, people who are just,
like I've said,
been out of the game for a bit, see that Eve somehow still survived.
Like I said, we stopped doing this challenge because it's cruel. It's a bitch of a challenge, but it totally impacts the jury, both negatively and positively. Like, if you do really well at it, it's such a boost to your jury game. If you do terribly at it, it looks bad. People are like laughing at you, you know?
Yeah, it's very visual. Well, at least when comparing to watching the Curl FIC live.
Well, and it's like,
when you see people not get the boot order, no one knows that outside of people if you were a host watching it.
Well, and it's like, this is purely a challenge about trying. Like, it does not take any skill. It doesn't take speed. It just takes effort. So if you ain't putting in the effort, that's not a good look.
Yeah.
So I guess let's say our winner picks. I think you guys all said Stephanie. I think I'm going to go.
I guess we should do rankings, because there's a few enough people that rankings really aren't going to tickle.
Yeah. I guess I'll do Stephanie, Russell, Kim, and then Eve in terms of what.
I think I flipped Kim and Russell.
Okay. That's a good call.
And Russell.
I think Russell isn't drawing dead. I think he can make the argument at the final tribal council, but I question his ability to not come off smarmy during it.
Oh, yeah. That's fair.
Yeah, I 100% think he's going to come off extremely condescending answering these questions if he makes it to final tribal.
Yeah, I think Levita even said in Ponderosa, I want to vote for Russell, but I'll just feel slimy.
That's what it is. Like, and it's really, I think any other season, maybe we would be all on board the Russell train. I think it's that the players he's voting out and lecturing to are the best of the best. So it's like, dude, why are you preaching to Penner and Cataly and Joaquin about how to play the game? You know what I mean? Like, it's absurd,
First stranded game as well, right?
Yeah, they've all won.
I rest my case.
They've all won before. Like, why are you lecturing to them? They know how to win too. He hasn't won Stranded, so really, he shouldn't be lecturing to anybody about winning.
Mm-hmm.
See, I think that's really what rubs people the wrong way, is that this is a winner season, and he's so arrogant about it, like undeservingly arrogant.
Yeah, I think a point people have made about winners at war is that people like the Michelle and Bens probably don't stand a chance in the jury because there's no way the jury is going to say the greatest of all the winners is Lem.
That's fair.
And I think Russell's in the same boat.
This is going to be an interesting final tryout council, especially because I think no one's like super excited to vote for someone to win. Not like if a Cataly or Joaquin snuck in there, or even Cassandra. Either way, look, I think it's going to be an entertaining final. I think it's been a fantastic season. I think well worth all of the planning and effort that everyone's put in. And I think it's been a really enjoyable thing to watch. I've had fun watching it.
Yeah. This season is a celebration of Stranded.
That's right.
Oh, it's been a blast watching it. And again, this is my very first season lurking. I didn't really know any of these people. I knew Levita, Joaquin a little bit, and getting to see them in their environment, basically doing what they do best, has been really cool. And obviously I met my spirit mother, Cataly, so I'm happy.
Yeah, WWCD. What would Cataly do?
Yeah.
I'm super happy with everyone who made the merge. I think, I wish a lot of the other people could have made the merge, of course. Some of the early boots were amazing too, but it was cool. I think it was a good story, and I think it was cool watching everyone interact with one another. That's always the coolest part of these deals. I think it will go down as one of our most epic seasons. I think probably one of our most epic casts. And again, I'm going to keep doing it, but I can't thank everyone enough for playing in this season. I hope they had a good time. Even the people who are getting shit on by us during this podcast. We enjoyed everyone.
Yeah, sorry, Russell.
Yeah, sorry, Russell, Stephanie, Kim, Eve. All of the Final Four.
Literally everyone left in the game.
That being said, I'm still thrilled that they all decided to play. I think everybody added a lot to the season. And even if they're not the ideal winner or whatever, I think that they played a hell of a game. And I think anyone in this season has massive bragging rights because I know it was a hard season for everybody. So I think that's going to do it for me for Stranded for Victory. This is probably our last podcast before the final. Maybe at some point Danny will not be stoned and will do a podcast with us before it's over. But if not, we will see you for the award ceremony.
Yeah, and I guess the reunion.
Yeah, the reunion of winners. I don't know how many people will actually hang around for the reunion. I'm hoping people come around, though.
Yeah, there's even, people who came pre-merge that if they hit the merge, I really would have liked to see them. I think Alex play Stranded.
Yeah, no, totally. Courtney, Alex have been awesome lurkers. Penny, even Kim.
Yeah.
People who we weren't expecting or who have not been in the community for a long time came out and they showed up and gave us a good show.
Yeah, and there's even some things where what if Mookie was still in the merge? Imagine how crazy he'd be if everyone else was just playing such a high level game and Mookie's there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Some of the old school players are not from Discord. They're not from the world of voice chatting with people. So we'll see how this goes. It'd be interesting to see if people come out of their shell or just remain in text, which is fun. But either way, I'm looking forward to it. Like you said, it's a celebration of Stranded. So I think it was a great time for this, and I look forward to seeing everyone again and also planning the next step of Stranded.
Yeah.
So
can't wait for season 36.
This is season 36.
Oh, 37 then.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. This is Pooty out.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.